Okay, guys, welcome to the Talking News. Please subscribe, push like right this moment. Also, don't forget to push that notification bell if you want notifications of new uploads. So, what we're going to be covering is there is an inmate in the same jailhouse with Vince that claims that he was able to get Vince to talk before anybody else. And the reason I want to share this information is because I have seen where police tried to save money in the past. Is that one of the cases here for the information that they got from a guy called David Schulfer, who was actually behind bars and sentenced for 25 years for robbery with a deadly weapon. He's actually going to be behind bars. I mean, he's been in and out of jail for a couple of decades now. But anyways, it's at the Harris County Jail, and this inmate says he supplied Houston police investigators with the location where Darian Vince had supposedly dumped the trash bag containing little Maleah Davis's remains. And that was 5 days before she was found. And this is based off the Houston Chronicle. So I'm going to go through the article that they shared with us. Anyways, the inmate David Chavant, I hope I say his name correctly, was actually being held while awaiting transfer to a Texas prison. And that's what he told Houston Chronicle. He said also that he had met with investigators on May 26 to share some information he gained from Vince that narrowed the search for the 4-year-old's body to a rural highway near Hope. But one of the concerns is the fact, he says, authorities didn't start the search for this bag in the neighboring state until May 31st, and that was after activist QX told authorities that Vince had given him the same location. And something that's kind of controversial is by the time investigators did get some locations and tips, in Arkansas Department of Transportation contractor near Interstate 30 who had already seen the discarded bag and ignored it. They actually hit the bag with their lawnmower, scattering the little child's remains along the grassy, embankment about 13 miles west of Hope and more than 300 miles northeast of Maleah's hometown. Now, this is a guy that's behind bars, and he quotes, "They waited too long," end quote, says Chavant, or David. I'm going to call him David, which I mentioned you to before. He was sentenced Monday to 25 years in prison for aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. Quote, "I believe if they had acted Sunday or Monday, that wouldn't have happened," end quote. And I think we all agree with that. The HPD Executive Assistant Chief Troy Finner said during a news conference later on May 31st that their investigators had not been to Arkansas until that day. He also declined to elaborate on what led investigators to find Maleah's body. Also, police spokesman Keith Smith said he also declined Wednesday to comment on the tip. So the fact that they do not deny it nor claim it probably is true. So on that evidence, Vince's lawyer, Dorian Kotler, I hope I said that right, said he has reviewed and he has no reason to dispute David's account, and that QX likely learned nothing from Vince that the police didn't already know, he said. Quote, "It's my understanding from my involvement with this case that Mr. David Chavant met with homicide detectives on the 26th of May and again on the 30th of May," end quote. He goes on to say it appears that the law enforcement already had the location of the body before QX went in there, and they didn't act on it. So Vince, who was once engaged to marry Maleah's mother, was tasked with caring for the child as Bowens attended her father's funeral in Massachusetts. Maleah was reported missing May 4th, and what Vince first said was it was an abduction. Police have since disputed his tale, and he has been charged with tampering with a corpse in connection to the child's disappearance. Vince could actually face murder charges as police continue to investigate Maleah's death, and is being held in protective custody at the Harris County Jail, which is only a few cells down from David Schulfer, who is 50 years old. Okay, so Vince wandered over to David's door as early as May 22nd to score some extra chow, the inmate said Tuesday. David handed him crackers and soup, and eventually Vince shared his side of what happened to the little girl who disappeared. The girl that captivated the city and the nation and drew hundreds of pink-wearing mourners to the city hall to pay their respects. David says that Vince told him, he says, "Man, I didn't kill her." He said, quote, Maleah died in her sleep and that she had the flu, end quote. David Chavant said he was among the few inmates on the 6th floor who were not hounding Vince with threats. Quote, "He won't talk to anyone else. Most of the guys are screaming at him, calling him a baby killer," end quote, says Chavant, who has been in custody or in and out of custody for more than 2 decades, as I mentioned earlier. But the strange thing is, this inmate says that Vince looks nothing like a men that he's seen behind bars. David said, "I've seen con games. He doesn't look like a murderer. He looks frail." All right, guys, so let's talk about this article. So the last quote that we see there, he says he doesn't look like a murderer. He looks frail. You know what? I do believe Maleah was sick. I do believe there's a possibility she could have died in her sleep. Not saying she did, but I say there is a possibility that could have happened because they mentioned she was dehydrated. Dehydration is a killer. But that being said, let's skip backwards to where what he decides to do with Maleah. Now, we realize that he did make an emergency call to Brittany, and Brittany refused to answer the phone, and their childish ways is the cause of Maleah's death, no matter what killed her. No matter what killed Maleah Davis, these two parents could have prevented it, no matter what it was. And that's what my point is. These two had no business being parents. Neither one of them cared about them kids enough to put the kids first. They say, "Oh, he looks frail. He doesn't look like a killer." Well, nowadays, killers come in different designs. They look different. Chris Watts proved that. We no longer have the Ted Bundys. We have the people that have hearts. They're out there killing people in different ways, of course, neglect, abuse. I mean, it never ends as to why the least expected people are killing today. But he doesn't look like a killer. So looking at this picture, look at it close. He's a manipulator. That's pure and simple. Does he have a good heart? He might have a good heart and mixed in there somewhere. But looking at this picture, when they take a picture of him, that's clearly a manipulation picture. He is manipulating what you see on the outside. because that look does not represent what's really going on. That being said, Brittany Bowens is also a manipulator. They manipulate to get their way. They manipulate to win in their world. They are not trustworthy because they're too selfish, immature, neglectful. Did I say selfish? Neither one of these parents should have had children under their arms. So what do you guys believe? I mean, you know how I like to look at the comments. Now, I haven't had time lately, but I will eventually one day. Please share. Drop in a comment box down there. What do you think happened to Maleah? Because there's so many factors thrown into this story, it's hard to figure out, honestly. I think there's more than one thing going on here, and that's why it's so hard. You have abuse, you have neglect, you have sickness. You know, you have children that don't have good parenting skills. Anything could have happened, and it could be more than one thing, and that's what I think happened. I think there's more than one thing going on. And especially when Maleah went to that emergency room, I'm not saying that she drank poison or she was poisoned, but they didn't do any tests. They didn't know what was wrong with her. And those symptoms kind of pointed in a direction that there was a possible chance that the child had something in her body that shouldn't have been there. You have AJ, you have Noah, you have Maleah. There's too many children. You have Lizzie. Too many children in a short period of time. This does not include all the other ones. I don't remember their names. The ones that are thrown over the balconies. Kids that are thrown into fires. This has happened in less than 3 months. This many cases. We have a serious issue, that's for sure. And what about the fact that they're saying police knew what was happening with this case before QX even walked in there? This inmate is saying, look, I gave the police the location. They just didn't act on it. And how many cases have I covered that seems to be an issue? Do you guys want to know what the truth is as to why they didn't go? And this is my opinion, because I've worked on other cases and I've talked to family members. It's money related. They don't want to spend the money if they're not certain. Or if they are certain and they think they're certain, they don't want to spend the money. And my example is Bonnie Webb. They found her remains in the desert and refused to do DNA testing because they were able to, they thought that they were able to identify her without the DNA testing. And DNA testing costs too much. This is what your suffering families and your people are suffering with. So when you're looking at politics on the internet and you're looking at abortions, Planned Parenthood and all these things, we have a serious crisis that involves everybody. And one of those crises is you're not worth the dollar. You're not worth the effort. And that needs to change. So why in the world did they not, if they actually, now we don't know this is true, but we're talking about it. If that inmate had that information and give it to investigators and he says they did not act on it, they either didn't trust them, which in my opinion, I would have acted on that because they act on thousands and hundreds of tips all the time that they don't believe. So X, it's money. It's money. So Tim Miller had to, pay for the jet to go and fly her back. And he didn't get the credit he deserved because he put the money into it. And money is important. But these police didn't want to spend the money unless they knew for certain without having to go there themselves. I'm pretty certain that's why. And if I'm not right, I apologize. But that's the way I feel. What do you guys think? I really feel like if you are on the low end of the totem pole, you don't matter. And that's got to change. Because honestly, it's the little people that make this world go round. You're the people that make things work because it takes large numbers. Okay, guys, well, I've got a lot to do. I'm still working on the second part of that timeline. I'm having trouble getting that done. I apologize about that, but I had a lot of things come up. This come up, I wanted to make sure I got this out for you guys because I thought it was important. But before I go, I wanted to go over Creg Davis and his parental involvement. Now, he's a young kid, but to me, I seen him walking ahead of this, and I thought to myself, if you care so much, why is Maleah dead right now? Why didn't you, the biological father, take care of Maleah when Brittany went out of town? You won't fool me. Sorry, Creg. You might not have been the one that took her life, but you're the one that could have prevented her life being taken by stepping up and being a parent. And it's more than once, twice, 3 times that you weren't there. But anyways, guys, they had a huge successful walk. The biological father is there, and you know, I just have no respect for him. I have no respect for none of them. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll try to get that video out for you guys. And, you know, I'm sending Maleah hugs and love to you guys. So, see you soon.